Hi guys, so we're going to work together here to finish this digital notebook. We finished the first 2 pages previously, so we should have both of our pages for microscope done. We're going to jump right in here with what is a prokaryotic cell. A prokaryotic cell is a cell that does not have a nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. Doesn't have any of those. And the word prokaryotic, pro means before, and karyo has to do with nucleus. So these are the cells that evolved before there was a nucleus, and so they don't have one. So you got to think of no, okay? That's the point of these prokaryotic cells. They do not have a nucleus. They're very simple, and you can see their DNA is kind of just floating around in there. Now they do have some parts that we should be aware of. They have a capsule. This is used for protection, all right, something our other cells do not have. The cell wall is also rigid and protects. The cell membrane controls what enters the cell. Oops, typo. And the pili that is there, which is unique again to the bacteria, is used for reproduction. We have the long flagellum that's used for movement, so we'll flap around like a little helicopter, move them around. Now ribosomes is one that we're going to see in all cells, and what they do is they make protein. So what I like to think of is ribs, like if you go to the restaurant and you order some ribs, it's nice meat. That meat is protein, so that's how I remember ribosome is ribs. And then of course we got our DNA, which is your genetic code. So these are all the parts that are in there. They're very simple. And when we look at these things, how they reproduce what's called asexually. They only have one parent. So one bacteria just breaks off and it makes another bacteria. And there's no mixing of the genes like when your parents made you. They took your mother's genes and your father's genes and they mixed them together to make you guys. They don't have that. And so because there's only one parent, they make clones essentially, so they're identical to each other. Down here we have some different kingdoms of bacteria. We have eubacteria, which means true bacteria. This is your regular, everyday bacteria, the kind that's on your body right now. And then we got archaeobacteria. These guys live in extreme environments where life probably shouldn't exist. But these guys are adapted to it. So like thermal vents in the bottom of the ocean, they're so hot that they would immediately kill us. But these little one-celled bacteria can live there. So how they get their energy, they get it through photosynthesis. So they use sunlight to make sugars. We'll be talking about that more later. Chemosynthesis is similar. They use chemicals to make sugars. It's rare, but it does occur, especially in the archaeobacteria. And then, of course, there's decomposition, where they break down dead organisms. And they put their nutrients back down into the ground. So these are the simple cells. Oh, I misspelled nucleus up here. You guys got to check me on this. All right, there we go. So these are the simple cells with no nucleus, very few parts. So now let's talk about eubacteria, which is literally every other kind of organism on the planet except bacteria. So here's our eukaryotic. So these guys have a nucleus and membrane-bound organelles. So they're going to have a lot of organelles. Oops. Membrane-bound organelles. All right. The U part of their name means true. And this still means nucleus. So they have a true nucleus. So euky, nuky, pro, no. Prokaryotes do not have a nucleus. Eukaryotes do. When it comes to them, we have the different kingdoms. So just to break this down, kingdom Animalia is all the animals. Kingdom Plantae is all the plants. Oops. Did it again. There we go. All the plants. Kingdom Protista tends to be microscopic organisms that need water. All right, these are things like amoebas and euglenas and parameciums. And kingdom fungi is your mushrooms and mold. So all of these guys, all these kingdoms are eukaryotes, which means they all have a nucleus. And because they're eukaryotes, they can actually reproduce in more ways. So they can reproduce both asexually and sexually, which just means exchanging genetic information. So depending on the individual species, they could do some different things. So how they get their energy is photosynthesis, but which kingdoms can do photosynthesis? Not everybody can. So the kingdoms that we can put in here is Plantae, do photosynthesis. There are some protists, like algae, that do photosynthesis, but fungi do not, because mushrooms are not green. As far as cellular respiration, that's going to be all of them do cellular respiration. And when we're talking about who's our main decomposers, the main decomposers that we have in this group is going to be the fungi with the mushrooms, and we have some animalia with the worms. There we go. So hopefully you pause these and get all your answers down. Now let's go into our organelles. So when we get on this one, I'm going to move some of these boxes around here while I talk. When we get onto these eukaryotic cells, and this one is an animal cell, and you can tell it's an animal cell, one from the shape. Animal cells tend to be more round, but they're also specialized. So there's ones that are not as round as this one. But they're typically not what's called geometric in shape. So like squares and a rhombus and things like that. They're not those kind of shapes. So that's one way to tell. And there's also some organelles in here that are unique to animal cells. And we'll be putting some stars next to those ones that if you see those organelles, it's definitely unique to that cell. And I'm going to do these definitions as few words as I can because we're more likely to remember them that way. So the first thing we're going to look at is the cell membrane. The cell membrane controls what enters and leaves why do I keep doing that? Enters the cell. All right, that's its whole job, and it surrounds the cell, and all cells have them. Then we got our cytoplasm, which is the jelly-like substance. Everything is floating in. All right. So that in here is the yellow stuff. Then we have our ribosomes. They're found in all cells. We just did them with the prokaryotic cells. They make proteins. Got to have them in all the cells. Now for lysosome, let's put some little stars in here. This is one that is found only in the animal cells, and it digests. It digests things and breaks them down, which makes sense because animals eat, right? And because we eat food, we have to be able to digest the food. We have the cytoskeleton, which kind of goes hand in hand with the cytoplasm, but it is the framework of the cell. For your Golgi apparatus, which is orange up here, this packages proteins. So the same proteins that are made by the ribosomes get packaged at the Golgi. They're kind of like the UPS of the cell. It's going to package them there and ship them out of the cell to be used to make new cells for our body. All right, then we got the nucleus. Hopefully we know the nucleus. It controls the cell and holds our DNA. All right. The nucleolus, which is actually inside the nucleus is the purple. The nucleolus is this dark orange in there. That actually makes other ribosomes, other organelles, and the ones it makes is the ribosomes. Makes those ribosomes for us. Then we have the mitochondria, or mitochondrion, if you're singular. So these are the powerhouse of the cell. All right, it makes all the energy for our cell. Then we have the ERs, and we have two different ERs, and they separated them out here. Rough ER is here in the green, and it has ribosomes on it. All these little dots are ribosomes, and it looks rough, like kind of like sandpaper. But because it has ribosomes on it, it makes proteins, and it will ship them. And where it ships them to is to the Golgi. Then we got our smooth ER. If you look at the smooth ER here in the blue, it doesn't have any dots on it. It's nice and smooth. And so it's not making proteins, but it actually does a lot of things. It removes toxins in your body, and it also makes fats, okay, called lipids. And then we got the centrioles. So for the centrioles, we're going to put little stars there too, because this is another one that is only found in the animal cells. They don't have them in the plant cells. So centrioles are used in cell division, which we will talk about more later in the year, how our cells divide. Sometimes there's other things hanging off our cells. So sometimes we had cilia, which are short and hair-like, similar to the pili we saw in the bacteria, but they are used for movement, but there's usually a lot of them and they're short and hair-like. Where flagella that we saw also on the bacteria is long and whip-like, and it is also used for movement. So we got different ways we can get these cells moved around. So this is your typical animal cell with all these organelles found within there. Next, we're going to talk about plant cells. So here is a typical plant cell, and they have all the organelles that we saw previously, plus some. So all of the ones down here are all going to be found unique to a plant cell. So we're going to start with a cell wall. Animals do not have a cell wall, but plants do, and bacteria. So these are rigid and protect the cell. Then we have the chloroplast, so it's dark green, and it is always green because this is where photosynthesis is going to occur. So we're going to put photosynthesis, which is when plants makes food. Then within the chloroplast, there's this thing, chlorophyll, which is a green pigment. Gives it that green color. That's why everything that does photosynthesis is green and in some capacity. All right, and then we got a vacuole. Now, animal cells do have vacuoles, but they're very small, and there's many of them. The plant cells have a huge central vacuole, and what this does for them is it holds anything extra, but mostly water. So it holds water, food, or waste, and it is large in plant cells, very large in plant cells. So looking down here, how would you describe the shape of a plant cell compared to an animal cell? So the word I would use is geometric. All right, and so geometric, again, think of geometry you will take eventually in school. These are shapes that are like squares and rectangles and rhombuses and things like that. And so let's not, I took this question off, but I forgot to take the whole thing off because I don't think we need to put this down. These specialized functions in a plant cell are definitely used for them to produce food, to produce photosynthesis. So what I want you to do last is take these 2 pages where we have these labeled diagrams of what all the organelles are, and you're going to come onto this page, and you're going to label your organelles on an animal and a plant cell. And so the pile is right here. You will click on them. Like the first one I have is a cytoskeleton. So you're going to try to identify where your cytoskeleton is, which it's right here. You got these little filaments. All right, and you're going to label that on your picture. And sometimes they're found in both cells. So I have another cytoskeleton here because it's also found in the plant cell. And you're going to label that. So just drag them down, finish labeling them, and then you need to save this and throw it in the Dropbox to get a grade. Bye, guys.